Look, you have been quite clear, as we just heard there, that you are opposed to President Biden's threat to withhold military aid if Israel does invade Rafah. But let me ask you this question. Why shouldn't Israel's war against Hamas proceed in a more precise way with a clear plan to mitigate civilian deaths in Gaza?
Well, I think it's impossible to mitigate civilian deaths in Gaza as long as Hamas uses their own population as human shields. I've never seen in history of warfare such blatant efforts by an enemy, Hamas, to put civilians at risk. And the last thing you want to do is reward this behavior. They put weapons in mosques, they fire artillery rounds from apartment buildings. They put command centers under hospitals to maximize civilian casualties as Israel tries to destroy the terrorist group. You don't want to reward this by restricting weapons to the victim of their attack. But let me just say this. This is Mother's Day, happy Mother's Day, but this is a tough time for the world. What Senator Sanders said, not another nickel of military aid to the United States, is the most dangerous, irresponsible statement in the history of the U.S. relationship. This is not Vietnam. Israel is in a fight for their lives. Hamas says they will do it again and again and again. They're dedicated to the destruction of the Jewish state, not helping the Palestinian people. Iran, the great Satan, vows to destroy Israel. So does Hezbollah. Israel is surrounded by forces, terrorist groups that want to destroy the Jewish state, not help the Palestinians. This is 9/11 and Pearl Harbor all rolled into one. To abandon Israel under these circumstances would be outrageous, it would be dangerous, and Republicans are going to fight back against Bernie Sanders and the squad.
Senator, let me just push it a little bit, though, because, of course, the United States has provided Israel with tens of thousands of bombs and missiles, just to prove some $14 billion in military aid last month. So the United States, even the IDF has said, has given it an extraordinary amount of support. I want to ask you, though, do you think Israel is in any way prepared to listen to work with President Biden? And is he trustworthy? And let me ask it this way. In a survey this week, more than half of Israelis said they thought Prime Minister Netanyahu's chief consideration was his own political survival. You've said you trust Israel more than the U.S. Defense Secretary. But why should Americans trust Netanyahu to put the United States' interests first?
Americans should be all in helping Israel against an existential threat. The one thing Israel and America has in common, Hamas would attack us if they could. Iran is the largest state sponsor of terrorism that shouts death to America, and Hezbollah is in the same camp. I've never heard anybody in Israel chant death to America. The people Israel is fighting are bent on destroying all of the Jews. This is Holocaust Remembrance Month, for God's sakes. We should unequivocally support Israel. Yes, work with them to limit civilian casualties. They want to do that. I know they do. They have a whole battalion dedicated to that. But this idea of withholding weapons to Israel is rewarding the tactics of Hamas to put civilians at risk. Here's my statement to the administration. Sit down with Israel, keep the weapons flowing, and work out a plan, if you can, that gets us all to where we need to be. I talked with Israel this morning. They are discussing with the Biden administration a way forward. I am somewhat hopeful we can jump over this impasse, but do not let Bernie Sanders run this war. Bernie Sanders and the squad are insane when it comes to how to defend Israel. He just said on national television, cut off every nickel of military aid to the Jewish state who's being threatened with oblivion. Shut these people down. This decision was political. He's trying to appease the radical left buying this.
Senator, just to be clear, the administration's position is not to cut off every nickel. And I guess the question is, why does Israel need the most massive bombs that can potentially level an entire block in order to wage this war? Why can't it be more precise?
Listen, here's what I would say about fighting an enemy who wants to kill you and your family. Why did we drop 2 nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki to end a war that we couldn't afford to lose? You don't understand, apparently, what Israel is facing. They're facing 3 groups. Iran, who has received $80 billion in aid. When Trump left office, they were exporting 300 barrels of oil a day. Now they're at 1.3 million a day. They've been enriched by Biden. They're taking that money to kill all the Jews. So when we were faced with destruction as a nation after Pearl Harbor, fighting the Germans and the Japanese, we decided to end the war by bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki with nuclear weapons. That was the right decision. Give Israel the bombs they need to end the war they can't afford to lose, and work with them to minimize casualties.
Senator, military officials would argue that there has been so much technology since those bombs were dropped that for that very reason, that is why Israel and other developed countries can be more precise. But let me ask it this way, because